Hey Todd, tell us about the late model Sportsman that you built.
So in 1992, my dad and I and Joe Woods all went in together and we bought a year-old Bullet car. We raced that as a late model for a couple of years, and in Wichita, Kansas, they always had a very strong Sportsman division. In 92, they shut that division down and only had late models for those type of cars. In 94, they decided to bring the Sportsman class back, so we decided to take that Bullet car and turn it into a Sportsman. So it was a main leaf car, and we had to either run leaf springs only, or it could be a 4-bar car, and you had to run sliders and big 5-inch springs and stuff like that. And that technology was not what it is today back then. So since this was a main leaf car, we went ahead and turned it into a stacked leaf car. And we had to put 5-inch springs on the front. So most of the guys that did this, they either cut the front clip off and put a Camaro or a Torino clip on it. And my dad and I rode to work every day, back and forth together, and it was about a 35-minute ride each way. So we did nothing but talk about this car the whole way to work and home from work every single day. Anyway, we decided to not put a clip on it, and I built some custom lower control arms for it, and we put a weight jack bolt with a nut on some plates, put big springs in the front of the car. Well, I didn't really know anything about big springs, and I made it for a 8-inch by 5-inch spring, not knowing that they didn't make 8-inch springs. They made 9.5-inch springs. So I went into the local speed shop here in town. Back then there was only one. Now we got 3 or 4 here in Wichita. But there's one. I walked in there, told the guy that owned it what I needed, and he looked at me and he's like, "They don't make that." I said, "Okay, well, let me think a minute." I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to cut the first coil off it. It's going to change it by this much. I said, "I want this set of springs. I want this for the right front and this for the left front." And he looks at me and he's like, "Who in the hell do you think you are?" I'm like, "Excuse me, what?" He's like, "Do you think this is ever going to turn a corner? Do you think this is ever going to work? If this worked, somebody would have already done it." I'm like, "I don't know. We're going to find out." So he got me the springs. I cut the coils off it, put it in the car. We get the car all put together. And this thing is unlike anything anybody ever seen before. The right side spring was clear up against the rear end housing. The left side spring had 4 inches of spacer block underneath it, and we lowered the spring way down in the car so the car would have some rear steer. As the rotation of the rear end turned, due to the stacked leaves, the left side would come back as it rotated, as it accelerated, and the left side would go forwards as it decelerated, which is completely backwards of what cars do nowadays. But back then, that's what you did. You did not have the rear steer that cars have today in the direction of today. So, and then I had a custom shock made to go on top of the rear end for a 90-10 shock, and it was way more than a 90-10 shock. Back then it was probably a 14-10. You know, it just had, you could not compress the thing by hand, kind of like similar to what we're running now on a pull bar car. So Then we had to run 12-inch wheels. We could not run 14-inch wheels. We had to run 12-inch wheels. So I determined where the tire was on this car as a late model on 14-inch wheels, and I sucked the wheel in on both sides and wanted 4-off wheels. And the same guy ordered the wheels from him. He's like, never going to work. Never going to work. Those cars take 5-off wheels. That's what they take on the right side. The left rear, we run a 3-off, so I wanted 2-off for the left rear. I'm like, just order the wheels for me. So he ordered them for me. We go out to hot lap this car. The weight rule was 8 pounds per cubic inch. So we built a 302 with a set of ported bow ties on it. Damn thing probably made 500 horsepower to it, if we were lucky. Run on methanol. So anyway, we take this car out to hot lap it, and it actually turned within a half a second of a lap of when it was a late model with a 406 in it. So, needless to say, we were ecstatic. This thing turned left. It went good. We didn't have any problems. In fact, we didn't even do anything to the car that whole weekend when we were testing it. So our first race was the next weekend at Rains Out. So we decided to go to Enid and run a NCRA late model show with this car with a 302, 12-inch wheels, stacked leaf, 5-inch springs on the front, no coilovers. I mean, this thing is nowhere near what a late model was. Make the show, and we run 8th with it that night. So needless to say, again, very satisfied. Brought it back to Wichita, and that car won every single race that year but 2. The next year, it won every single race but 1. The 3 races that it didn't win, we didn't finish. Broke a valve spring one night, and we cut 2 tires down. That car won every trophy dash it was in. I mean, it was by far one of the most dominant cars in that class ever. And the funny thing of that period is when all this was going on, everybody dreams of seasons like this. It's kind of like a golfer. You dream of hitting a hole in one. We couldn't have imagined winning 22 races in a year, and the next year I think we won 17. They had a few less races that year. We won 17 races. But what it taught me over anything was racing is not all about winning. It's about having a good time. It's about having fun. It's about family. It's about friends. It's about making friends at the racetrack. And what those 2 years did was it almost ruined racing for me, because it got to a point where it wasn't good enough to win the race. It was, why did it take us 10 laps to get in the lead? And we're talking point average inverted, so we started last every single night because there were not enough cars for a B feature. So we would start between 16th and 20th every single night. And if we weren't leading by the halfway point, it was a disappointment. And we all got to bickering with each other, and it was just very stressful. When you go to the track and you expect to win no matter what, it takes all the fun out of it. And it got to where none of us liked each other. And at the end of the deal, we all went our separate ways. The driver bought everything out. we had another car, new Bullet for a late model. He bought everything out, and we had a complete empty shop when that second year was over. Not a racing part there. When we sold out, he took everything. And that's how I got into racing myself. After that, I was like, I'm never doing this again. If I do this, I'm driving. I was 28 years old, bought a modified and started driving. But I want to talk about some of the things, some of the crazy stuff we did on this Sportsman car. So every week, we would pull the rear leaf springs out of that car, take them all apart. And they didn't have spring raters like they have now. They didn't have any of the tools that they have now. If they did, we didn't know about them. And at the time, I weighed about 225 pounds, 230 pounds, somewhere in there. And we would take the left rear spring by itself, the main leaf, and I would stand on it, and I would bounce. And if that spring hit the floor, we threw it in the trash can, and we took the spring out of the right rear and put it in the left rear, and then we would put a new spring in the right rear. And then we would put it all back together. And then the next week, we'd pull the leaves out, put the leaf on the floor, and if it hit the floor, we threw it away. And we probably went through, I don't know, 10 main leafs that year. It was just crazy stuff like that that showed me, at that time anyway, that the really smart guys in racing, they didn't know everything there was to know. I mean, the guy that owned that speed shop, very successful racer, and he thought this was the stupidest thing he ever heard of in his life. And by the end of that first season, there were probably 8 Bullet cars that resembled what we were doing, but wasn't nowhere near as fast as what we were doing, because they didn't know what we were doing. They just thought they seen something without seeing what it really was. And it was very satisfying the first, 6 or 8 weeks. Just the car worked perfect, the driver drove perfect, the motor worked perfect, the crew worked perfect, and then it just started unraveling. So I guess the moral to this story is, one, appreciate when you are on a roll. Appreciate it. Don't take it for granted, and don't expect it. Anything can come along and change, and it did. We sold out, and we went 3 years before we won another race. We went from being very, very successful racing to me driving. I'd never drove anything in my life. The first year I was terrible. I was terrible. But anyway, it's make sure that racing stays fun. If it's not fun, then you need to look at your program and figure out what's wrong and fix it. If you like these stories, I have hundreds more of them. Been doing this for 43 years, and I have stories about stories. So like our page, give me a thumbs up, please. If you're into it, I'm going to try to do 2 a week. Some weeks there might only be 1, but I think I like doing this, and I love telling stories. BRT Race Cars. Look us up.